Hello, ladies and gentlemen. I thought I would make this video because women are usually to be seen and not heard as much. And a lot of times in the Black community, the males usually want to do all the talking. And they want to always, when it has to do with coupling or marriage or single Black women, always, almost always, it seems as though women are demonized, ostracized, or they're chastised as to why they're by themselves. And so the reason why I entitled this What Reverend Jasper Williams Jr. Failed to Admit in terms of um, single women-led households, especially particularly in the Black community, because for those of you who don't know who I'm talking about, Reverend Jasper Williams Jr. was one of the people who was invited to do the eulogy for Aretha Franklin, who just passed away. And she's the famous singer and well known in the Black community. And excuse me, I thought I would read from an article to kind of shed some light as to why we have our issues in the Black or within the Black community as a whole. And I felt this article was pretty fair in terms of laying out some of the real key issues as to why Black women don't get married. Some don't get married, and some choose not to be married, and some choose not to be in relationships at their current time. Now, there could be a number of other reasons, and I'll kind of say that at the end of the article, but some of the real big reasons are within the article. So I'm going to go on and read this. Excuse me. Let me turn this off. This article was out of Marie Claire. And usually a lot of times, there's women magazines and they have really great articles, especially magazines that Black women will frequently, read. They don't have fashion and hair. And also they have like issues with couples and getting married or getting divorced, or why people get married, why people don't get married. And so I wanted to read this. So, excuse me for clearing my throat. Okay, so marriage isn't for Black women. Now, don't let the title throw you off. And I know it seems negative, but I'm going to read this and hear me out. The system disadvantages African Americans so severely that tying your life to another person legally can make matters worse, not better. And this is by Tiffany Drayton. And this was very recent. It was February 15, 2018. So it was within this year. And it's what I mean very recent as in current as to what has happened within our times in the Black community. So let me begin. I don't want to get married, and the reason why is complicated. My lack of desire to tie the knot is not because I do not have a significant other that I love. I've adored my partner since the moment I first saw him playing basketball alone at a local park. Hey, can I shoot with you? I asked him with a bit of hesitation. Yeah, if you want, he coolly responded. So in our time together, we continually managed to gracefully overcome standard relationship issues like establishing sexual boundaries and making time for one another despite hectic schedules. So since our chance meeting that day at the park, I've had a partner in the true sense of the word. We even recently became parents together. And so he held my right leg and counted down from 10 on every contraction while I pushed our baby girl into the world. He beamed at her with love as she snuggled on his chest during skin to skin time. So then he looked up at me and, still grinning, and any fears I ever had that we would not last vanished for good. I finally felt confident enough in our relationship to say yes to the big question. And yet I'm hesitant to actually walk down the aisle. How do you feel about getting married? He asked casually over dinner a few months after bringing our baby girl home from the hospital. I shrugged and stared at my plate, trying to avoid eye contact. The silence was deafening. Dating is a numbers game, so one that is rigged against me and women who look like me. About 6 years ago, I picked up a book titled Is Marriage for White People? How the African American Marriage Decline Affects Everyone by Ralph Richard Banks. I was a 21-year-old college student trying to find a committed, respectful relationship in the midst of New York City hookup culture. Men were more interested in getting a drink and going back to my place than they were in my name, let alone my hobbies or passions. I blamed all my bad dates on the city's commitment phobic dating scene. But the problem isn't where I lived. Female friends all over the country are having difficulties finding a partner worth marrying, especially if they're black. A close friend thought that she was having a baby with the love of her life, whom she would eventually marry, only to find out that he got another woman pregnant. Mixed babies are cuter, he told her that when he found out that she was pregnant. So he already branded their black fetus less desirable than the one he had created with a white woman. There are no black guys on my campus, and one girlfriend lamented to me recently about her university where she feels dating options are severely limited. And whenever I meet very successful middle-aged black women, they're typically single and without children. Banks looked laid His book laid out the reason why plainly dating is a numbers game and one that is rigged against me and women who look like me. All of the guys I grew up with are either dead or locked up. My partner once explained as we drove through the Jersey City neighborhood of his childhood. There's a crisis in the black community, a health crisis, an education crisis, an incarceration crisis, a violence crisis. Black men are disproportionately losing the fight to overcome those crises, while black women are desperately trying to flourish, creating an imbalance of available men versus women. According to the National Center for Education Statistics, of associate and bachelor degrees awarded to black students between the years of 2013 and 2014, more than 60% went to black women. Meanwhile, Michelle Alexander points out in her book, The New Jim Crow, that there are more black men under correctional control today than there were under slavery in 1850, at least 1.7 million to be precise, limiting their opportunities for education and employment. Black men are roughly 7 times more likely to be killed than black women. Even if black men overcome all of this, if they survive, if they thrive, they do not want to marry a woman like me. Black men are twice as likely as black women to seek marriage outside of their race. Statistics collected by OkCupid reveal that black women are the least desirable demographic in the idea that there would be no I do in my future. So I was okay with being alone. So I was going to travel the world and adopt children. Still secretly, I wanted a loving spouse and children of my own. That view of my future drastically changed when my casual request to shoot hoops was accepted. And not only did I find a black man who wanted to love me, but I also felt he was worthy of my love. I had hit the jackpot. My guy loved black women, and he had never been to jail. He had a master's degree in social work, and he was dedicated to fatherhood and his career. I beat the odds that insisted I would never find a suitable partner to marry. But finding a spouse is only half the equation. Marriage should create a safety net for couples, but for some black women like me, it just means a whole host of new problems to navigate. While I was worried about finding a suitable guy, I overlooked the ways that I could be unsuitable. I failed to recognize that America's disincentives marriage for black women trying to bootstrap their way out of generational hardship created by centuries of disenfranchisement and discrimination. In my current financial circumstance, being a single mother is better than a married woman. Women hold the lion's share, reads 2/3 of this country's student debt. What's more, black women leave college with more debt than women of any other race. A third of black women who got a bachelor's degree between the years of 2011 and 2012 left with more than $40,000 worth in student loan debt, compared to just 10% of white women. We then have the hardest time paying these loans back thanks to the president persistent I should say that too, the persistent gender and racial wage gaps. In 2016, the median weekly earning for white women was $766. But for black women, it was just $641. That's $500 per month that could have gone to expenses like these payments. Okay, so these statistics aren't just numbers for me. I, like so many other educated black women, am financially a financial liability. So not only did I leave college with tens of thousands of dollars worth of student loan debt, but I have to struggle for years to find full-time work despite sending out resume after resume. So I'm not alone in this. So black women are twice as likely to be unemployed compared to white women, according to the Bureau of Labor. And while some would pin this on black women being more likely to work in the fields with lower pay, that fails to acknowledge the reality of the name-based hiring discrimination. A field experiment in which the same resume was sent on various employers with only the name at the top changed discovered a hard to swallow truth that black people have long known. Emily and Greg are simply more employable than Lakeisha and Jamal, even if they all have the same credentials. So say I continue to be underemployed, my investment in education proving a waste, I could, if we were married, harm my partner's credit, currently our only lifeline. Financial strain seems to be ubiquitous and unavoidable for most black families. So it is not just getting hitched that could potentially harm our finances, but there are actual tangible costs. The new pay-as-you-earn plan, revised in 2015, which determines student loan payment caps, helps single earners, but can drastically increase monthly payments for married couples. As a single lower income mother, I qualify for health insurance through the Affordable Care Act, which also covers my baby. So marriage would afford us access to a family health insurance plan, but the average for the family health insurance plan premium is about $600 more per month than a single adult plan. And those marriage related tax benefits. Many families and with low income earner experience a marriage penalty, usually because their income combined with the spouse's disqualifies them for EITC, which is earned income tax credits. So this disqualification could cost us as much as $6,000 come tax time. So filing jointly as a married couple has zero benefits for us. Financial strain seems ambiguous and unavoidable for most Black families. So it is no wonder that divorce also does. So while I would love to say I do to the man I love, I don't want our relationship to end up in ruins because of money issues. So many people reading this probably think that that's part of what the marriage of institution is all about. But taking on one another's commitments and supporting each other through financial hardship. Okay, so that's what some people think. You should just go ahead and accept those realities. But those people do not understand that this country's institutions constantly fail Black people as a whole. So they do not know about the medium $100,000 wealth gap between Black and white families generated by centuries of discrimination and oppression. So they cannot grasp the harsh reality that America promised opportunities to Black people who chose to embark on a quest for higher education, but in reality have been saddled with the mountains of debt and student loan debt. So they do not know that the redlining confined us to subpar neighborhoods, also subpar schools for our children. That the justice system continues to prey on Black people instead of protect us. So they cannot fathom the existence where they are labeled undesirable simply because of the color of their skin. So I choose to fight against the hardships by remaining unmarried. I made decisions that ensure that we have access to basic resources like health care, food in the fridge, and potentially savings to buy a house someday. So if that means I have to forfeit the fairy tale of wedding, then so be it. If that means I must bear the brand of the Black single mother, then so be it too. I give you America's permission to label me as you see fit, but I long stopped believing in American dreams. So I thought this was a must-read article, and it pretty much shed a lot of key issues having to do with why some women and some men also decide that it may be better to stay unmarried. And maybe they would have a relationship being together as common law long-term partners. But some women choose to not have any long-term relationships and to be involved because they have these issues with men who maybe at one time they were married, maybe at one time they were common law or they had spouses, but something happened to the father in the home where he was killed by the police. Mr. Reverend Jasper Williams should have labeled that out. He should have cited that out. Also, there are males in the Black community, and many of them who are locked up. And so you heard the numbers, at least 1.7 million to be precise. It says there's more men, Black males, under correctional control than there were under slavery in 1850. And correctional control is the new Jim Crow or the new slave plantation, so to speak. And also, she made a key issue about most of the women are the ones that are going to school and getting educated, and you don't see very many Black males on these college campuses. And so there are a lot of things that come with all of that. And so most times when people get out of, if they ever do make it out of prison, if they hadn't did anything that would keep them in there long term, a lot of times these men are not given any condoms and they're having sexual relations with other males in the prisons, or they're being violated. And then there's other issues when you're living in close quarters with people. and you're not being treated properly and you're not getting good health care medically, there could be other diseases that you can catch, like TB, HIV. There's other things that you can contract while you're incarcerated. The other thing is that they know that once these men get incarcerated, they're not only taken away from their families and their loved ones and their children. That's some of the reason why some of these women are by themselves. So instead of you standing up there blaming the black women, the system that is put in place has caused a lot of all of this as well. And so you have to look at those entities before you start naming the black woman as the creator of these problems. And so this is the reason why I picked this article, because it really does list out a whole host of the major issues that have taken a lot of black males out of the home that aren't the fault of black women. And so even with all of the debt that has mounted up. And so we've always heard, we as in people who are here in America that originally were here, have heard the term the American dream. And so the American dream has not always been attainable for African Americans because of the wage gap and the wealth gap issues, which you'd see that I had mentioned in the article much earlier. And so these are issues that I think that he had failed to mention when he was doing that eulogy. Also, like I told you, that you also have men who they outright make videos as to how they're going to pursue white women in relationships. And like you see that one of the guys, he had gotten a black woman pregnant, but he chose the white woman that he got pregnant over the black woman simply because he felt that mixed babies were cuter than black babies. And so you have an issue here where it says even black men will seek, they're like twice as likely as black women to seek marriage outside of the race. And so statistics collected on OkCupid reveal that black women are supposedly least desirable demographic in the dating pool. And so this man, he said that he'd rather have a mixed baby over his baby he first had conceived. So these are some hot button issues, some things that have happened within our community. And so these are not the fault of black women. You can't make him stay if he chooses a white woman over a black female. And so a lot of this has been promoted too in the media. And I'll mention one of the families that is most popular is the Kardashians, for example. They're always slathered all over the internet, laying on top of black men. Now, I've heard some people say there's such thing called as the Kardashian curse. That usually when they're involved with these black males, they don't really fare well. Something ends up happening in these relationships and that they don't do very well. And so I can't really speak on all of that. All I know is that it is sort of like, from what I've seen, it looks to be as a big, huge trend that's been skyrocketing, basically, is that this desirability and this, access to white women, and it's just unstoppable. And so these are things that Reverend Jasper Williams Jr. failed to mention in his eulogy. He was able to list out all of these issues in the black community, but he failed to mention all of this. And he had to throw in there that black lives to him didn't matter, when we clearly have a lot of issues in here that involve black lives that aren't being treated well here in America and aren't faring well, because you have all of these obstacles. And so I felt that this was a very tangible article to bring about the real truth of realities of what young Black people and older Black people, middle-aged Black people have faced in this country. And so I think it's unfair to put people in a box and assume that we're back in the 50s or the 60s, because we're not in that, living in that time anymore. Whatever happened in his time era, maybe it was attainable at the time. Maybe you could see that there was a chance. But, you know, I would say that, if you had to start the civil rights movement, there had been problems back then. It might have seemed attainable, but could you live amongst white people peacefully? There were some stories I read that you couldn't. There was places that were redlined, and it was okay to do that, and it wasn't against the law. And people knew that everywhere you go in America, there was some kind of wall or there was some kind of line. Black people have lived with walls all our lives. There were neighborhoods that you couldn't live in. You didn't want to cross a certain side of the tracks, certain side of the road, or you didn't want to go to a certain side of a street or a neighborhood. We've lived with walls all our lives. And so a lot of this, Reverend Jasper Williams Jr. did not make mention of. And he should have, because he lived back in that time. So he should fair well know. And so, like it mentioned, that there were subpar communities and subpar schools that Black people were forced to live in, which they call ghettos. And then if you don't have the income and if you're unemployed, you are in those neighborhoods, whether you like it or not. And so these are things that he did not mention. And I felt that this was more on topic and more the reason why you find that there are not many Black couples that will be ready to get married or ready to stay together. Maybe before it was like, okay, we're all in this and we're going to get married no matter what happens. If you have debt, if I have, a lot of people won't tell you the things that they have acquired over the years. Yeah, well, we have an issue now where people have diseases and they don't want to tell their partner their sexual history. Did Reverend Jasper Williams Jr. mention that? He didn't. HIV is still happening. There's now some other diseases like gonorrhea and syphilis and all these other diseases. And if people are sleeping around with different people and they're not willing to share their sexual past and history, then you have no relationship. There's no trust. And so just like she said, she hit the jackpot. She found somebody that was well-rounded. He was educated. He had a job and he loved Black women, which is more important. He loved Black women, not just wanted to be with one for sex, not just wanted to be with one so he could have a place to stay and a meal ticket, not just wanted to be with a Black woman because he felt like, oh, there's no other woman that I could be with, so I'm just going to be with her because nobody wants me and I don't have no place to go. And so the guy, if he feels he's a loser, he's going to mooch off of her. See, these are things that Reverend Jasper Williams Jr. have not mentioned. That's why some women will stay single, because they don't want to get in relationships with guys that do things like that. And then you have the issues of domestic violence, which are very real in the Black community. And Black women most times will keep things to themselves. They don't want to tell you that they're being physically or mentally or emotionally abused. A lot of times we have pride and we will keep things to ourselves because we don't want everybody in our business. And so it takes a long time before we open up and we decide to get help for those issues. And Reverend Jasper Williams Jr. did not mention that either. And so I'm going to leave this video, but this right here, this article is out of Marie Claire, is what it's called. And so this was by Tiffany Drayton, and this was this year, 2018, February 15th. And so it says the system of disadvantages African Americans so severely are that tying your life to another person legally can make matters worse and not better. And so a lot of times, I don't know if people notice this, but just the institution of marriage comes with a lot of other responsibilities other than just liking the way somebody looks and smiling in their face and feeling like this is somebody you want to hang around with or be with indefinite. The other responsibilities come with being in another person's, presence. So she mentioned some real serious issues like credit history, like bringing whatever your problems. People always do this on those dating sites. They say, "Oh, I don't want anybody with baggage." But when you meet somebody of a certain age, you're going to come with something. And some people can tolerate certain things while others can't. There may be some issues that shouldn't be tolerated. And so there may be things that people might not be telling you about themselves. They could be hiding their past. And so that is a very scary thing. Relationships and hooking up with people is not what it used to be. Trust me. And so Reverend Jasper Williams, he doesn't know. Maybe he's with somebody and maybe he's married. And maybe back when he was getting together with whomever, it was maybe a little bit more or less complicated. But now there's a lot of factors involved in getting in relationships and having a relationship with somebody that's attainable and sustainable. And so I'm going to leave this video, but I just thought these were some key points to bring out because some people don't want to mention the true facts that some people are not with people, not because they just don't want to be with people necessarily, like the woman said, but when you start bringing all together all of the complications of the whole construct of marriage and being in a relationship with somebody and what that comes with and what you're going to bring in that marriage, it also can pretty much, you can predict whether that marriage is going to be sustainable and is going to last. Most marriages won't last. It's not just infidelity as well. So infidelity is also a problem in the Black community, and I have to make mention of that. Now, I know people have maybe heard me say this before. They've heard other videos where women are angry because they've been hurt. We have huge issues with child support as well. And we saw that was one issue. That was why one guy, he was running because he was running from the law because he owed child support. But he was killed. Nobody should be killed because they owe child support. And so we do have issues with child support. And I feel like some of that was also set up to hinder relationships as well. I'm going to be honest. I feel like they target the Black males harder, even harder. And so it makes it like a defeating circumstance. You feel defeated. And so with that comes, you could end up getting incarcerated as well. Unfortunately, somebody was murdered behind that. And so the very system that we think is going to be out to protect and serve us also pray against us. And so like I also said, I think I mentioned in previous videos that there's issues trying to get employed in jobs. Sometimes you can't get jobs because they don't want to hire you simply because of how your name sounds. They don't even have to see what you look like. It's hearing your name. They don't want to employ you. And then you'll have people that'll work against you and keep you behind. They don't want to see you get ahead. So if you do have a position somewhere and you're making low pay, they want to keep you there. They don't give you room to be promoted. So I'm adding a little bit in there because I've seen this happen. And I know some people who are feeling that they're going through this, where if you use them as a reference, you can't trust that these people are going to put in a good word for you. They don't want to. They just use you up and then throw away the scraps of who you are, what's left of you. And you're expendable, and then they'll get another person to fill your spot. If you get injured or you can no longer work, you're on your own. And so these are the things that Reverend Jasper Williams Jr. did not mention. And so a lot of times these women, they have gone to school because they have to work and they have to support themselves. And if they're left with a baby, they have to support that baby. However, they were left with that baby, there's different circumstances, different sets of circumstances for every family, single family, that is. And so every woman has a story. Just like every man has a story, every woman has a story. And so some women were left with children because the father was killed by the police. Some women were left with children because the man didn't want to stay there because he chose a white woman over her and the kids. He chose the white woman because he, like it said in the article, he felt that mixed babies were cuter. There are issues like that. There are some women that were in relationships with men and they were married to them, and then the man left them for a white woman. And so these are things that Reverend Jasper Williams Jr. has not mentioned. He's so ready to pretty much put women in their place. And so you have to really look at all of the facets of why these situations are the way they are. And so I'm just going to leave it at that. And so don't get me wrong now. This is not every guy, but we have a lot of them out there that are like this. And in some of these situations are not even their fault. Maybe the guy did want to be with his wife and his children, but he was snatched out of the home for whatever the reason. And now he's incarcerated and he can't get out. Or it may be years before he gets out. And so there's a lot of different situations. And I just felt like this was really, really hard hitting, and it was really dead on. Also, the way they have stigmatized Black women. And I wanted to get into that because Black women are told that, in these dating sites, they're the least likely to be desirable. And so how do you think that makes Black women feel? At Aretha Franklin's funeral, nobody stepped up to the plate in defense of Black women. A lot of times when Black women get killed or when they're lost or they're missing, you don't see all this outpour in, society and media to look for these Black women when they're missing. A lot of times that has happened. You don't see enough of this. When you see a white girl that is missing, the whole town comes together. They make flyers, they make buttons. We know who that happened with recently. And if something happens to her, all of social media knows about it and everybody's going to know about it. And it's plastered all over the newspaper and it's a big hot topic and people want answers. But when it's a Black woman that's missing, nobody even knows it. And then when they find out and they find wherever she is, they just, if they even look for the killer, they just mention the death of the person and then it is over with. And so a lot of times I've seen that. And like if we're on a dating site, which I don't like those things because like I told you, we had a situation where a Black man, he was on these dating sites and he was picking Black women and he was strangling them and killing them. And they found one of the women that was in her home and she was murdered. And so there's so many things that are not mentioned that Black women have gone through. But people are ready to bash Black women. They're ready to put down Black women. They're ready to talk about how undesirable, how they're loud, and how, they're not attractive, and but these are lies. A lot of times, the same people saying that can't wait to get in bed with those women. All up and down, and I'm gonna mention this. In Los Angeles, there's a street called Western. And most of the young Black women who were put out on the streets that were prostitutes, you know who were picking them up? Most of the ones that get on these sites and say, oh, we don't date Black women. Oh, no. We only date our own race. They were Mexican men that were picking up Black women. Mexican males or white males. And most of them were picking up the black women. And then if you seen the black men picking up black women, they were picking them up off the street. And then they would do whatever they had to do and then, drop them back off. And I know that's not a good representation, but I just want to tell you that they sexualize black women. They feel that you're only good for one thing, not for long-term relationship and for monogamous relationship and for having a family. So some people got this perception in their mind that black women are only for sex. And so that's why I brought that up, because it's a negative perception. I mean, we get this a lot of times. Even if you could be minding your own business, you could be walking from the store and going to your place where you stay or whatever, and you have somebody whistling a dog calling you, whistling at you like they're, whistling at somebody's pet or something like that. Very disrespectful. Black women are treated very disrespectful. Not taken serious, a lot of times treated like we're only meant to just sleep with and not have committed relationships. So some people have that in their mind, and it's not good intention. So a lot of times the women don't want to be involved with men like that, because the men are not serious about having no real relationship with you no way if he only wants to get in the bed with you. And that's all he sees. Like the woman said in the beginning, that they didn't want to know about her name, her hobbies, and her passion. All they wanted to do was get a drink and go back to her place so they can do the hanky panky, if you know what I mean. And so we're very much sexualized. And we're sexualized not only by black men and demonized by some black men. You have a bunch of videos all over YouTube, probably Instagram and some other sites, where women are called out of their name. They're told that they're undesirable, that there are other names that I won't even mention right now, but I just say it's very disrespectful. It's not what Aretha had wrote in that song, Respect, those words. And I know somebody else was over that song, but still she was the one that sang it, and it had a lot of significant meaning. And so a lot of women in the black community are not treated respectfully, not even by sometimes our own people. And so there's not that much high regard. And so I'm just going to let this video go now, but I just thought I should mention those things, and it's sad. And I heard some other videos early this morning. I woke up and I did a video, and I didn't do it to be my reason for supporting Colin Kaepernick's um, speaking out on the issues of police brutality in the black community. Although I feel like it's been pretty much watered down by the campaign ad that they have put out now, where now you no longer hear about the issues of the black community. It seems like it's bringing in all these people that are entities that don't have nothing to do with the first reason why he actually spoke, which was the police brutality in the black communities. They kind of drowned it out and water it down now with diversity. And I'm not saying that I'm against diversity. I'm just saying that that wasn't the initial reason why he did what he did. I just feel like that these are probably people that are in marketing. They're making these decisions because they're trying to reach a broader fan base of people so that they can market the shoes off. But anyway, with that being said, I'm going to let this go. So this is by Tiffany Drayton, and it says marriage isn't for black women. And so it had a whole bunch of, I think, a real whole well-rounded reasons as to why some women feel like it's better to be single. So I think this is more fitting, rather than making it seem like women are just maliciously trying to be single because they just don't want men. And, I have to bring this into front and center as also not all women are straight. Some women are into alternative relationships, and I won't even go into that. So, and there are men that are into alternative relationships. And so, we're in this time now where As to before, back maybe in the 50s and 60s, people would hide who they were and who they were in relationships and involved with because of fear of being ostracized. And now we are in a time where it's acceptable to be in alternative relationships. Gay, lesbian relationships are the thing nowadays. And so Reverend Jasper Williams Jr. did not mention that as well. And so these are true reasons some of these men have decided to become women themselves. And so Reverend Jasper Williams Jr. did not mention that either. They may not desire to be with a woman. And so they may want to be a woman themselves. And I'm not saying that to bash people, but I'm saying these are realities of today. And so these are things that he did not make mention of. And Black women, we don't have control over that. We really don't. You cannot blame us for all of this. Okay, with that being said, I am going to let this video go. Give me your thoughts and feedback on what you think about this. These are some true realities. You know, some things that are really left out of our control, basically. Thank you for listening.